Hey everyone, I'm John from Fast Films and today we are going to take a look at a 2012 horror film called Silent Night. The movie begins with a man shaving his chin hair while listening to a Christmas song in the bathroom. Suddenly, a woman screams in the background. She appears to be tied up on a mattress. Just then, the perpetrator suits up in a Santa Claus outfit to leave the apartment. The next scene shows a man screaming at the top of his lungs in a dark room. The weird-looking Santa Claus opens the door and turns on the light. He picks up an axe and walks towards the man. The man begs for dear life. Santa Claus goes back, pulls a switch, and fries the victim's brains in the process. On a bright morning, a phone rings near a woman's bed. She wakes up, picks the call, and talks to the sheriff of the town, Sheriff Cooper. He informs her of the missing officer, named Jordan. He also tells her to come to work even though her shift ended a few hours ago. She reluctantly dresses up, attempts to solve the newspaper's crossword puzzle, and goes to the living room to greet her dad. The duo exchange greetings pleasantly and talk about parking tickets and the hard part of the crossword puzzle. Aubrey finally leaves the house for her day. The next scene shows a festive town with lots of Santa Clauses walking around the street. Aubrey stops by to greet Mayor Revy. Tiffany, who happens to be the mayor's daughter, walks in on their conversation and disrespects her dad's request for her to put on decent clothes. At that moment, a mother is taking her heart pills when her teenage daughter walks in and slaps them out of her hands. She then demands her mother take her to the mall so she can get her RV. The mother sighs and goes for her purse. As her mother walks into the room, there's a knock on their door. The girl opens the door and sees a creepy Santa. She asks for her gift rudely. He reaches into his bag and brings out an electric wand which he uses to electrify the girl on the spot. Meanwhile, Aubrey drives her car to the Crier Christian church in their town. She enters the church, sits down, and stares at the altar almost in tears over the loss of her husband. Just then, the father of the church comes and comforts her in an eerie tone. He assures Aubrey that he's always there to help her if she ever needs his help. Aubrey politely walks away and drives to the station. She's greeted by Brenda, who tells her about the survey she was reading. Aubrey talks about her frustration with being called to work after her shift. Just then, Deputy Giles walks in late as usual. The ladies ask him why he was late and he says he was busy getting gifts for the girls. He sneezes on the gifts as he brings them out and the ladies reject them. Just then, someone calls the station about a rogue Santa scaring the children in town. The woman on the other end complained about a certain Santa Claus scaring children. Aubrey takes up the task and leaves the station. She stops on the way to admire the holiday spirit around town. In the next scene, Santa Claus talks to a little boy named Timmy about his gifts and his parents. He says Timmy should never trust his parents. He then tells Timmy not to tell on him at all and sends him off. Aubrey, who seems to be next in line, comes and questions the man in the Santa Claus outfit. She asks for his permit to practice in their state and he gives it to them. Santa Jim then asks her what was the matter and Aubrey responded that they'd been getting complaints about his bad attitude towards children. Santa remains unfazed by her allegations and instead bullies her by asking her why she wasn't home to celebrate Christmas with her husband. This angers Aubrey, but she is hailed by Brenda about a bad smell coming from a particular house. Aubrey tells Brenda to send Giles, but he's busy attending to a missing persons case. Brenda then tells Aubrey about the wife of the missing person eloping with Deputy Jordan. The next scene shows a pale-looking guy, Dennis, talking to his grandpa about how bad it was to be stuck alone to celebrate the holidays. He then steals some cash from his wallet and is about to walk away to meet with Tiffany. Just then, his catatonic grandfather holds him and warns him about Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. Surprised, Dennis tells the nurse who enters the room about his dad talking after so many years. The nurse doesn't believe him and he walks out. Upon reaching the stinking house, Aubrey recoils in shock as she enters the house because the house has a smell of rotten flesh. She then walks further inside to find a dead body in the basement. She identifies the body as Deputy Jordan's and calls it in immediately. Brenda tells her to wait for backup, but Aubrey decides to check out the entire house for the slayer. As she checks out other parts of the house, a phone rings in a room. She enters the room and opens the drawer where the sound was coming from. Upon opening the drawer, she sees the phone clutched around a severed hand. She later sees other body parts scattered in the room and she freaks out. Sheriff Cooper arrives at the scene and warns her to wait for backup next time. He inspects the room and calls forensics. Aubrey and Cooper discuss the incident and Cooper promises to catch the sick criminal soon. In the next scene, Tiffany is seen at a photo shoot. She's shown an envelope which she picks up happily and scurries outside to her car. As Tiffany walks down the stairs, she sees the creepy Santa Claus who electrocuted that little girl walks up the stairs. She stares at him as he makes his way to the building. He knocks on the door. A lady opens the door and meets her demise in the hands of the creepy Santa. The sick Santa then walks in and starts taking others' life. One of the models manages to escape into a pile of trash under a window. The creepy Santa chases her with a pickaxe in his hands. The model runs to a garden and presses a button that turns on a trash grinder. Unfortunately, creepy Santa catches up to her and finishes her off. Back at the office, Aubrey keeps discussing with Brenda about Jordan's demise. Brenda receives one more call about another unknown case relating to the Morewoods. Sheriff Cooper attends to the Morewood case while he assigns Aubrey and Giles the photoshoot case to investigate. Giles makes up excuses and Cooper tells him to man up and go. At the crime scene, Sheriff Cooper talks with Mrs. Morewood about the incident with her daughter. Then he comforts her and goes in to check out the crime. Morewood warns him about the eeriness of the crime. Cooper walks in anyway and sees the body. He talks to Aubrey and Giles on his walkie-talkie and they discuss the nature of the other cases they'd been investigating lately. Aubrey finds out some information about the tragic incident at the photoshoot. They find a video camera and immediately confiscate it. In the next scene, a group of ladies sings Christmas songs to a listening audience in a random part of town. After the songs, they're greeted by the church father again. He requests to take a picture of the ladies and they pose for the group photograph. He takes a few pictures and walks away. Just then, Tiffany is greeted by Dennis and they disappear to their hideout. At the office, the sheriff and his team check out the footage left on the video camera. Aubrey watches the footage and calls Giles to bring in anybody putting on a Santa outfit and matching the description she gives him. Giles reluctantly agrees. Meanwhile, at the church, the weird father holds a 3-person sermon with the criminal Santa Claus and an elderly woman. The father tells them about the truth behind King Harold massacring the children born in the same manger Jesus was born in. As he was taking his sermon, the weird Santa Claus man finishes him off in cold blood. He walks over to the elderly woman, gives her money, and spares her life. On Christmas morning, Aubrey is seen in the town square checking out the people sitting outside. She enters a pub and sees a man in a Santa Claus outfit eating voraciously. She then talks to one of the customers there about the origin of the guy. She checks him out and he fits the description. She immediately informs Sheriff Cooper about Santa Claus. Cooper leaves the other Santa Claus suspects at the office and proceeds to the pub where Aubrey was. After the call, Aubrey goes in to question Santa Claus, who is identified as Mr. Curson. Mr. Curson answers Aubrey's question in a raw manner and tells her about the horrifying story of the creepy Santa Claus who finished off his wife because she left him for another man. After the story, he assures Aubrey that the story wasn't an urban legend as she claims it was. He says it's real. Just then, Aubrey makes a call to a certain number, and Mr. Curson's phone rings. Curson immediately makes a run for it and escapes out the back door. Aubrey follows him outside and is ambushed by him. He hits her on the head and slashes her hand. Fortunately, he was stopped by Sheriff Cooper before he could cause any more damage to her. Aubrey is rescued and calls her dad to tell him she's not cut out to be an officer. Her dad tells her to take it easy and trust her gut. Back at the station, Cooper marks the criminal Santa's name and swears to take him down. Aubrey, however, isn't so convinced about Curson being the criminal. She says it's too easy to catch him just like that. Cooper argues that simple is always best. Aubrey confronts Cooper about the facts of the case, saying there was no correlation between the loss of lives to Curson. Cooper orders Aubrey to search the streets for Curson. In her car, while checking out a magazine, Aubrey is greeted by Joe, who's also dressed in a Santa Claus outfit. He asks her about the dead guy's case in Watson. Aubrey denies knowing anything about Jordan's demise. Just then, Aubrey talks over the walkie-talkie with Cooper and supports her previous claim with an article written some years ago. Cooper goes along with his plan and they both enter Curson's residence, which looks like a pigsty. They continue arguing over their views over the case again, with Aubrey walking out on the sheriff. Just then, the creepy Santa is seen at Mayor Revy's residence. His youngest daughter catches the mayor smoking and politely confronts him. He promises her he'd stop smoking on New Year's Day. She hugs her dad and is then interrupted by Tiffany and Dennis. Tiffany tells her father she's taking Dennis to the visitor's room and the mayor agrees. As Tiffany runs off with Dennis, the mayor receives a call from Sheriff Cooper, who informs him of the serial killer on the loose. As he's on the call with the sheriff, the creepy Santa Claus steps in and eliminates the mayor. Meanwhile, Tiffany and Dennis are in the guest house playing with each other when the creepy Santa Claus breaks in and eliminates Tiffany. He locks Dennis in the bathroom while in the act. Dennis, however, manages to break out of the bathroom but is also eliminated by the serial killer. Santa walks to the main house and meets the mayor's little girl. He gives her a candy cane and walks off. Just then, Aubrey and Cooper are seen in the town square stalking the criminal. The festiveness is in the air as a suspicious Santa unveils himself. Aubrey sees him and pursues him. As the suspect was about to escape the scene, he's stopped by Sheriff Cooper, handcuffed, and taken to jail. At the jail, the suspect complains about the joyfulness of Christmas while in prison to Audrey. Back at the office, the sheriff orders Aubrey to find the other girl from the motel while he and Giles defend the station. Aubrey goes to the motel and sees Kirsten in the room. As she calls out to Kirsten to put his hand behind his back, Kirsten pulls out a gun and points it at Aubrey. Aubrey shoots Kirsten in self-defense and makes an interesting realization. Turns out that her family was the next victim. She rushes home to her family while the sheriff dismisses Giles for the day and tells him to take out the trash before leaving the station. As he was taking out the trash, Giles notices a car parked in the corner blasting rock music out its speakers. He goes to check it out and is eliminated by the real criminal. Meanwhile, Aubrey phones Cooper and tells him about the gift boxes the serial killer sends his victims before he strikes. Cooper doesn't believe her theory and cuts the call. Right after that, the lights go out and Cooper is burned alive by the serial killer holding a flamethrower. Aubrey, on the other hand, manages to get to her house and finds her dad already dead. As she cries out, she hears her mom's screams from the closet. Aubrey rushes to comfort her mother and tells her she's going to get the slayer. At the station, Brenda hides in a room after spotting the serial killer dressed as Santa Claus. The man walks gently to locate Brenda and almost had her when the sprinklers suddenly start working. The suspect in jail shouts out and is freed by the slayer. However, he doesn't appreciate the help from the slayer and tries to wrestle him to the ground. The slayer retaliates and eliminates him. At that moment, Aubrey rushes into the station and finds Sheriff Cooper already dead. She carefully walks into the station and hears Brenda shouting in the distance. As she struggles to find Brenda, she sees the body of the suspect in his cell and proceeds further but is attacked by the serial killer. Luckily, she attacks him with a knife and gets her gun which fell from her hand. She then points the gun into space and is assaulted from her back by the slayer. He overpowers Aubrey and knocks her down. Before he could finish her, Aubrey stands up and grabs the slayer's flamethrower. She points it at him and burns him alive. After taking care of creepy Santa, Aubrey rushes and saves Brenda from the burning station. The next scene shows a burnt man staring at a photo in his car. He then flashes back to the time where a man burned a woman and was shot by a policeman who got there in time. The shot made the man lose control over the flamethrower and eventually burn himself. Just then, a young boy was seen in a car in the flashback witnessing the whole tragic event and the movie comes to an end.